it took me a lot of figuring out to say, I'm a person who likes this. I'm a person who does this well. But invest that time in yourself. You will likely need help with that. You can find professional mentors where you are now. You can look at somebody whose work you admire, or even as simply as has the job you want, or looks like they behave under pressure in a way that you aspire to, and you can ask them for help.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Ty Hammond. Today's guest is Marni Carmichael. Marni is the Vice President of Marketing at ImageSource, where she spent nearly a decade turning complex technology into clear, human-centered stories that drive growth. A product and marketing leader with a track record of unifying messaging, scaling SaaS revenue, and leading high-performing teams, Marni has helped ImageSource achieve double-digit growth and remarkable customer loyalty. Her expertise spans process automation, go-to-market strategy, and brand transformation. Known for her practical creativity and focus on results, Marni is passionate about connecting people and technology in ways that make work easier, smarter, and more meaningful. It's a pleasure for me to have Marni on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, Marni.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I always start here. So every leader has a beginning. Every human, of course, has stories and people that shape us, and who we are as leaders at work and in life starts taking shape long before we advance to any executive position of leadership. I'm curious if you'd be willing to share who's someone from your early life or maybe an early experience that shaped the kind of leader and person that you are today.
Yeah, I mean, as we were getting ready for this discussion, I was thinking about your suggestion to be personal and go deep, and I think part of my origin story is being an only child, being in a family that was a little disorganized and chaotic, and lots of stuff going on, some healthy, some unhealthy. And I learned to be pretty self-sufficient early, and that has and I think I had a drive very early to kind of looking around and going, okay, this isn't really how I want things to go forever, so what am I going to do to get myself together and to kind of create the life that I want to have, the environment that I want to be in. And so very serious bootstrapper and very serious, like, kind of self-driven and self-reliant person for, I'd say, most of my life and in my early career. And then, probably the thing I had to learn the most was how to operate, how to ask for help, how to operate, in a team, how to be a good team member and a good player. And so then I could, kind of graduate to being a coach or a leader. I had one experience early on with a boss. I was in an inside sales role in my probably late 20s. And it was a company I really wanted to work at. It was a role I really pursued. And I maybe was, less than a month in, and my boss was a VP over a product line, mostly in charge of sales. And he came up to me and said, one of my kids is sick today, and my wife stayed home yesterday, so I have to go home today so she can work. And that'll happen to you, and it'll be okay. And it was like such a like relief, like this. I had never really seen the mix of personal and professional and the kind of trust that, yeah, you'll do what you need to do where you need to do it and we'll support that. So that's one of those things I always remember of like, oh, okay, it kind of, I got to raise my shoulders, lift my head a little bit and like, yeah, I'm gonna need some I'm going to make some mistakes or I'm going to need some help or, we're going to make accommodations for each other and it's all going to be in pursuit of, the best possible outcome.
With so much of what you shared there really resonates with me as also an only child,
Oh,
uh, and and very early self-reliant and
yeah.
self-sufficient. And a lot of what you said there, I heard the learning to ask for help, and I heard that
Mhm.
in that story that you shared there as well. I'm curious if you'd be willing to expound just a little bit more on that particular aspect of it, and that story in particular, right? How does that inform who you are as a leader and how you lead today?
Yeah, I think that I do try to be, there's two parts to your question, I guess. The asking for help part, I think that you have to make a turn from I know what I'm doing and like look at how well I'm doing. You have to make a turn from that into some confidence of the skills I bring are valuable and useful, and I'm kind of walking in that confidence. To I can't possibly know everything, and I'm going to need to grow, and I'm going to need to rely on the people who know different things than I do, if not more, or even if they haven't been there longer. Everybody knows something different than I do. So it is a turn in maturity to acknowledge like this is what I bring and this is what I will get, and I will give as well. So there's that part of it. I think that the lesson in that interaction was I need to be human at work. We need to bring our whole selves everywhere. That doesn't mean you're not professional. That doesn't mean, you're kind of running all your personal issues out at your desk or on your coworkers, but it means you are yourself everywhere you go. And so if you kind of step into that and acknowledge like, yeah, there's some stuff I'm going to work on and there's some stuff I really do well, then that asking for, that's what I saw in that moment, like a bit of vulnerability, a bit of humanity. There was a bit, I really hadn't seen a lot of two-parent households operating in equality. Like her job was as important as his, and he had a big job, and we really felt there like we were running part of the business. But to acknowledge that, hey, what's going on at home, what's going on with my partner are equally important to what's going on here today. That was kind of a step into kind of honesty and transparency that I think I do try to bring that to my leadership style now. Like I'm imperfect, a lot of times when you're managing people, they or I've received the feedback like, well, nothing really seems to get to you. You handled that so easily. It's like you have no idea what's going on inside. Like that was not easy. So you have to kind of express that. Like if my body language or if it's not natural for people to pick up on that, I have to say it like, oh, that was tough, and this is what was going on inside, and now we're okay, we stepped through that, now what?
Yeah, so it's so rich and a really wonderful lead in to my next question, really, which is that the essence of what this podcast is about, exploring what true leadership is. And of course, that's going to mean different things to different people. So what does true leadership mean to you, and what makes a true leader in your eyes?
Yeah, I have experience in my personal life in, like personal mentorship, and then, I have responsibilities at work to lead other performers on the marketing team. And I think, in my personal experience, I can say very clearly it means, walking somebody into their confidence, to more self-worth, to really walking out of difficulties or repetitive patterns or kind of a limiting self-belief. That's what leadership means to me in my personal mentorship experience. How can I walk another woman into her self-worth and validate that and kind of water that and help it grow. And so when I bring that to work, I transform that into questions like, what do you think? How would that work out? tell me more. Like, I want them to give me all of their thoughts, not just the checkbox or what they think I want to hear or what they think accomplishes the task. A lot of times, people that work for you will come to you in a bit of a "what do I do right now" state, and you can like jump into that kind of mild crisis energy, or you can kind of go, "Oh, well, tell me more about what's going on," or like yesterday, for example, we had a mistake that happened in our marketing automation, and where we sent an old email to 7 people, like, for whatever reason, I can't, I could explain it. It's not worth it. And she was so worried about like, what do I do now? I'm like, it's really low stakes. It went to 7 people. We caught it right away. Why don't you talk to the sales rep whose customers it affected, and you guys figure out what's best. Like, you can send an apology, he can call, we can ignore it. Like, it's low stakes stuff. But that's an example of like, how can I help that individual be more confident in how we're responding to a problem? And then what I want is to bring out more confidence in how we're responding to an opportunity and to something more growth oriented.
Yeah, I love that. Everything that you're saying is reminding me. I haven't thought of this in a long time, but it's one of my favorite quotes about leadership from Peter Block. And he says, perhaps the true function of leadership is to confront another with their own freedom, their own
Mm,
power, and their own agency. I
yeah,
really
that's
get that
cool.
sense
Yeah, yeah.
and speaking with you about that. And so much of what you're saying, it really strikes me that the ability to show up in the fire and respond with a sense of calm in that way when there's so much room for reactivity, right?
Mm,
That sort of thing takes work
yeah,
generally,
yeah.
right? To get there. Uh,
That's true.
kudos, kudos, kudos to anybody out there in which that's always been
Yeah.
really easy to come by, but most often that's wisdom hard won. Of course, that the life and leadership is a path that's shaped by fundamental turning points that we encounter along the way. You've already touched on a couple here. I'm
Mm.
curious if you'd share about a time that's standing out most for you right now when you realize that your way of leading or living really no longer met the demands of work and life, and growth was really needed.
Yeah, I think there's a couple, like, again, on the personal side, I think over many years, like, I've had to, I think at a younger when I was a little bit younger, like that 20s and 30s period of work, I was really ambitious and very driven. And that was probably it was at the expense of coworker relationships for sure. And I know my family made sacrifices for that as well. I traveled a lot when my youngest was very young. And I know, those were very conscious decisions of kind of risk reward or sacrifice outcome. And I don't really think in terms of regret, because I can't, the past is done, and I think we all benefited from that kind of sprint at work for me professionally, even though it might have it lasted years. I think that the outcomes have are good. But I think something kind of turns where you're like, I'll tell you one professionally, when I hit executive platinum, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, that is an achievement that some professionals are like, yeah, I'm never going to give this up. When that happened, I was like, I cannot do this again. This is definitely putting my values out of balance. Like, I cannot celebrate recognition of being gone this much. That was a real turning point. And I think the positive outcome of that is I saw I really had a lot of choices in how I was spending my time at work, what I was saying yes to, and what I was placing value on. And again, going back to like, how do you ask for help and trust others? You have to start inviting other people into those responsibilities. Like, you can handle this trip on your own, or, let's see if the customer is ready to come here. Can we take turns? I did a lot of international work with Japanese manufacturers, and sometimes they were willing to spend some time with us in the US. So how do we balance that? How do I start bringing other people in? How do I start building a team around that versus just running it? So that's something. And now I think about, like, as I've gotten older and as I really had to put on the personal side, I had to put a lot of time into what do I like? What do I like to do? How do I like to spend my time? What makes me feel good? Why am I doing these things? I think plenty of people, exercise for outcomes. Like, I want to look this way, or this is, the external pressure that tells me I need to do this. And over the years, I've just gotten to learn a lot about what do I like to do, what makes me feel good, what creates balance, like inside, not just in the work life where my time is spent, but where do I feel still and quiet, and how much of that do I need to be a high performer?
Yeah, yeah. Has me curious. I hear so much from that turning point. Sounds like a very
Mhm.
powerful turning point. And turning points, I just want to say, are not necessarily like just points in time, but shifts that happen
Yeah.
over time, of course, in a
Yeah.
progression of growth. But I heard a lot of what you turned towards, but
Mhm.
what did you have to outgrow or let go of?
Yeah, I think I had to let go of, and that's a great question. I like that you're kind of thinking about the other side of this, but I think I had to let go of a lot of comparison. Like, success is going to look like the person who did this role just before me, or how my boss was performing his duties. Success might look different than that. Like, my capabilities might be different, and that's a good thing, because again, we're all going to bring something different. He doesn't know everything, I don't know everything. Maybe me doing this differently is a good thing, and it's a better utilization of our resources across a team or across an organization. So I had to let go of, I'm going to look like this, a kind of stereotypical executive. That's what it's going to look like. I'm going to wear one thing he always did too. He's always wear a sport coat to the airport. So I'm going to wear a sport coat to the airport. I'm going to have my business cards in my pocket, my pen in my pocket. I'm going to work on the flight. I'm going to, it just had to kind of break apart about what is really reasonable. How do I work differently? And how do I really turn towards that, so people get the best out of me. If you're kind of working constantly against your natural state, like, there's so much friction there, and that is like a loss of energy, which at work translates to a loss of productivity. If you're constantly fighting what your skills are to try to, look different or be different, or, there's a balance between learning and changing and growing, and just always fighting against what you already know how to do well. You really have to accept that, be confident in it, kind of, I don't want to say exploit, but use that to its full ability, and then add on.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't think of a more
Mm,
appropriate conversation for the conversation of true
mm,
leadership, especially as I think about, beyond performance and beyond image,
mm,
and thinking of all of the deeply held assumptions that we need to let go of. That's really,
mm.
that is the process of growth, letting go of what we think something is in order to realize something greater. And of course, that kind of growth, everything that I'm hearing from you, that takes a real commitment. Thinking about your journey over the past, several years, your own growth and all of the ways that you've been talking about, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself for your own growth?
Well, I have always, throughout the years, invested in professional coaching. So in addition to, like, personal therapy, or, whatever those tools are, I've always invested in some professional coaching. And probably about every 3 years, I'll do a good 3 to 6 months with a coach. And the last coach I worked with had a I guess it's not a curriculum, but she had a test, or a series of yeah, it was really a test that, identified some aspects of your personality. What how other people are viewing me. And it really dovetailed to what I knew about myself personally. And I think that was a big leap forward in kind of self-acceptance. Like, yeah, you're bringing some of this stuff to work. This is how it's affecting your team. Here is like some simple language you can use to start turning towards something different. Like I had said, asking more questions about like, well, what do you think about that? Or what do you think the problems might be with that? What was really identified is like, one of my superpowers is executing a big idea. I have some lack of confidence in having the big ideas. Like when you're in leadership, it's like you probably need 3 to 5 ideas a year. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I've got that. I'll get kind of stuck in the, oh, I don't know if I have the idea, but I have a superpower of executing another idea, breaking that down into real process and tactics and measurements. So it really kind of helped me lean into that. Like, yeah, that is your superpower. But what you don't want to do when your CEO throws the idea out there, you don't want to start in on why it's not going to work. Because that's kind of the way my mind works. Okay, here's all the risks with that. Can't do it can't do it this way. And then my mind will get to this is how we can do it. Just like when you're interacting like that, you're kind of shutting it down quickly. And when you're at an executive level, then he starts looking around the room and going, well, who's going to say yes? Everything she's saying is no. So I just got to learn like some really simple, my head is not saying no. My head is saying how. And then I'm coming out with all these are all the hurdles. And if I get through all of those, then I'll come up with a big pile of things we can do. But I didn't really realize I was kind of shutting it down, right? I wasn't really bringing out the collaborative energy that will take an idea forward. And in all honesty, that will improve the visibility of my contribution, which is important. So just learning to say things like, tell me more about that. Or how do you think we should handle this? Or what does somebody else think about this, perceived risk, instead of just like throwing up all the negative stuff in the room. So anyway, I hope I tracked your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, what I love about that, first of all, is, and I'm a firm believer, of course, in getting help along the way, but I really, appreciate that you took it the step farther and talked about the ways that coaching and that guidance actually helped you in a significant way.
Yeah.
Of course, curiosity, drawing people in, finding the ways to, not only for you to be the one to execute the idea, but to help everybody else get on board and to buy in and to choose in and to execute the idea. So, leadership, of course, is also about what we're shaping for tomorrow. So I'm curious, what's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, or the impact that you want to have?
One thing, I really want everyone that has worked for me, I want them to grow in their career. One thing I recognize is, they may not work for me or with me or at the same organization as me forever, right? People are going to make moves or organizations are going to make changes, but I want them to be better for having worked with me. That's important to me. Like, how have I had a positive impact on somebody's career or growth? That requires honesty. Being direct is being kind as well. I've had to really learn that, and that's still a muscle I have to build. People need structure, they need direction, and they need honesty from you. So I hope that I have modeled that I've given others an opportunity to say what they may perceive as difficult things in an appropriate way, in a way that is framed around growth and positive change. There's a couple of things, very specifically that I'd like to achieve at ImageSource that we haven't yet. There's a growth curve at an organization, from below 30 million to above 30 million. And I'm really trying to push towards that goal here, that revenue goal. It takes a real culture change. It takes daily behavior change to make that move. And then there will be another move, right? Then we have to be functional and healthy and growth oriented at that state to make another turn towards another goal. So I really want to see us make that turn, and I want to bring people along for that because, we're a small company. We are, founder led. There's a lot of there's not a lot of family members here, but there's a lot of deep connections in long-term employment here. And I want to see people enjoy that and get the benefits that the organization will bring to them when we make that turn. Personally, I'm looking forward to, I really am looking forward to having somebody on my team who's kind of coming for me, who's chasing for that leadership role. I think that would be really exciting. And I think that I'm confident enough to hold for that. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love well, first of all, that you have a vision in multiple different areas or respects. And part of that is so much is bringing up the next generation of leaders. What are the ways that you feel like you most need to personally grow and develop in order to realize, you've already said the honesty, the transparency a bit. What are the other ways that you're feeling your own need to grow in order to realize that?
Well, I think this might sound a little counterintuitive, but I've spent probably the last 10 or 15 years kind of developing more of the emotional qualities of work, that emotional intelligence for work, and now I think I have to add a layer of a little bit more swagger. I need to kind of marry those two parts of myself, that overachieving, really ambitious 20 to 30-year-old. I need to layer that swagger on top. And I think my challenge there is like I read that in myself as arrogance, but I think externally people read that more as confidence and ability. So trying, for me personally, like those behaviors, I'm going to swing way past the middle. I'm going to do unnatural things, and then I'm going to come back to what a middle might feel like for me. So that's where I think my growth is, like how, and I'm trying to frame that in terms of how do I step more into that confidence, how I step into my experience. And that's not always easy when you're doing new things. I can't say, oh, I have done this before, I know how to do it. There's a lot of mental work to go, this is like what you've done before, or you're going to try it like this, and you're going to ask for help, or you're going to measure your performance. But yeah, that's what I'm working on.
It's definitely a different level of confidence, one that isn't based on doing things well, but in really trusting oneself, regardless of how well we do. That's a real deeper level of confidence, which is part of the reason why I am called to the work of leadership, because I believe that, we stay on the path of leadership. It will call us to that greater sense of confidence and trust in our own being. The path of leadership is determined, of course, by where and how we meet our growing edge. You're already talking about this to some extent, but where do you feel most tested right now? What challenges are stretching you the most in leadership in life?
Yeah, I think professionally it is like I talked about, I'm great at executing an idea, and that can become very tactical behavior, like very task oriented behavior. And so if you leave me alone with a spreadsheet, I'll be in it all day, and I'll be like, this is what it says, this is how we should visualize it, everybody should learn this. But I'm really challenged to acknowledge what the best use of my time is, and then how to trust others to do those parts that I find most fulfilling, but don't really match the best use of my time. So I think professionally, I'm there. I think, as we mature in our careers, I think there's a sense of endurance that I'm not challenged with, but I'm aware of. So there's a little bit more of, I think also just at my time of life, kind of being, having adult children and having a lot more autonomy over my time. I think my work-life balance has actually shifted a lot, where work is really a very primary thing on my mind, not just a time commitment. So I think that that's a challenge. I'm trying to really just think of it as a season. Like, yeah, now's the season for that. Um, I'm not trying to sound too nostalgic. It may be my last big run, and runs could last a decade. So how can I give that my best? How do I maintain my energy for it, my enthusiasm for it? And that's made, changes in my personal life. That's about taking good care of myself. It's about having that support in other ways at home, whether that's therapy or a lot of downtime. Like, I'm very protective of my time on the weekends. I need to be outside. I need to be doing some nesting. I need to be cooking my own meals. Like, those are the things I've learned over time that are going to give me the endurance I need for the job I have right now.
Well, I really hear so much deep reflection there, and something that I'm learning as I'm aging as well, the importance of the conservation of energy and the cultivation of like really caring for, what helps us to thrive and revitalize, to continue working in a way that feels really vital. So
Yeah.
it's apparent to me the amount of reflection you've given to that. And this last question here is a little bit more of an invitation. So you have the time and the space here to offer to our listeners whatever it is that's most in your mind and your heart to share right now, anything at all. Take your time. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think I would ask or suggest everyone to be you, bring that to work. I think what's behind that, though, is like you said, it took me a lot of figuring out to say who that was. Like, I'm a person who likes this. I'm a person who does this well. But invest that time in yourself. You will likely need help with that. You can find professional mentors where you are now. You can look at somebody whose work you admire, or even as simply as has the job you want, or looks like they behave under pressure in a way that you aspire to, and you can ask them for help. I've had women that I work with who we're not in the same department. We don't have the same responsibilities. We don't have, our work does not overlap, who've asked me for that time. Like, hey, would you mentor me? And we spend, maybe 30 minutes, an hour together a month, whether that's in an early Teams meeting or if it's a lunch, or, and sometimes friendships develop out of that. And we spend more time together. But, be open, look around for that help, and be vulnerable and ask. And I think it all kind of had to start with, like, yeah, I don't really know how to articulate what I like and what works for me and what I'm good at and what value I bring to work. That's not a good place to stay. You're always going to be chasing how you think somebody else is doing or how you think you want to feel and what actions will match up to that. So you've got to invest in the time to figure that out, and that's everywhere. That's in your personal life, that's in your personal relationships, and that's at work. And then, go for it. Be that where you are.
Amazing wisdom. Well, you can't follow somebody else's playbook to your own leadership. So, Marni, I so appreciate the wisdom that you've shared here today with me. I've really gotten so much out of it. And I'm sure that whoever listens is going to equally benefit from what you've shared here today. So thank you so much for being our guest on the True Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Ty. Thanks so much for asking.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.